Terrain ahead. Pull up. Terrain ahead. Pull up. Too low. Terrain. Too low. Terrain. 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 Climb. Climb now.
Another one of those flying days where the weather kept things interesting. I don't want to spoil the ending, but this one ends with a final glide that I'll always remember. As always, lots of lessons learned on the way. Check out the chapters to skip straight to the exciting bit. This flight out of Unterwössen in the Alpine foothills, the forecast is for a moderate northeasterly wind with typical Nordstau conditions. Low cloud base all day meant getting into the mountains was off the cards, so we roughly set a plan to go out into the flatlands and go as far west as condition would allow. We are 6 gliders and we're departing as close to 1 p.m. as possible to give us room to play under the rising cloud base. I'm second up, so my first task is to catch the duo discus, which is leaving first, and then find a suitable place to park and join up with the others. The room that we've got to play under the cloud base is much less than forecast, so the plan to join up and team fly is all but abandoned. I'm also struggling to catch up with the duo discus, so it turns out to mostly be a solo flight, but we all keep in touch and share info over the radio. I reached Olstadt and conditions were feeling good, likely because of the tailwind we had experienced on the way out that we'd need to go back against later on. I've always wanted to see Neuschwanstein Castle from the air, which is another 25 kilometers to the west. However, looking in that direction, the cloud base lowered significantly and I didn't fancy my chances, so just like the others, I decided to turn around and head back home. Pushing back east into wind was initially no problem. Cumulus marked some decent climbs, but as the afternoon progressed, climbs started to significantly space out and the wind picked up. A rather wide blue gap started to form between the flatlands and the Alps. It was starting to look like getting home would be tricky. One glider trying the route home via the mountains had already reported landing out, and 2 more gliders ahead of me reported landing out at Warngau, which would be on my route home. Luckily, I found a climb just beyond Warngau airfield, which gave me the chance to work my way northeast to the better-looking sky. Once I managed to get to the north, things were looking more positive. I connected with a few cloud streets and made progress into wind back east, but a new challenge was emerging. The Chiemsee, also known as the Bavarian Sea, is a large lake that sits at the mouth of the valley that leads back home to Unterwesen. With a strong wind coming from the east, my route home passes through the lee of the lake. Thermal activity in the lee of the lake looked to be almost null, but one isolated cloud over Rosenheim looked like it might give me enough to glide across the gap. The cloud turned out to be nothing, and now I have to reconsider my options. A few clouds on the mountain edge might work, but then there is the lee of the ridge to contend with. Or further north, the sky is looking a bit more busy, but it will mean a long detour. I decided to go north where there is a suitable airstrip that I'd been to before. Let me know what you would have done in this situation. If you've enjoyed watching, hit the subscribe button and you'll be first to join my next adventure. For the rest of the flight, I'll display what I was seeing on my flight computer so you can see the vital statistics that I was seeing during the flight. I arrived at Vogtereuth around 250 meters above the ground, quite low. I tried searching along a wood line for a climb and found something weak. At least it would buy me time to find something more serious. At 30 kilometers from Unterwesen, I need around 750 meters more to have a chance at making it home. With a strong easterly wind drifting me away, it is clear this thermal was not strong enough to get me the required height. But it was a good place to stop and build a little height to maintain some hope of getting back. Passing Vogtereuth airfield to the north, I spot an isolated cloud between here and the better-looking clouds in the north. This could be my ride home and save me a long tour, going all the way around the Chiemsee. I knew it was time to turn, as the strong smell of a pig farm filled the cockpit. This thermal certainly was showing all the good characteristics needed for me to get home. question would be how high the cloud base is and how far I would be blown downwind by the time I got to the top. In any case, this is my best option, so I'm planning to stick with it as far as it goes. It's worth mentioning what some of the numbers that I'm checking on the glide computer mean. FIN-GR stands for the glide ratio that I would currently need from this altitude and position to reach the target waypoint. An LS4 has a glide ratio of around 40:1 on a good day, so I'm waiting for this number to fall to at least 40 to make a final glide attempt. Better would be around 35. Once I start the glide, I'll be comparing this value to the one titled GR Cruise, which is showing the current average glide ratio. If my GR Cruise stays higher than the FIN GR, then it's a good sign. The down arrow on the left indicates the arrival altitude relative to the ground at the target waypoint, assuming I fly a McCready 0.5 cruise speed. This takes into account current wind, so I'm looking for a positive number here, ideally showing an arrival above 200 meters. A full explanation of what can be configured in the glide computer warrants a full new video, but if there is something specific you want to understand, write a question in the comments and I'll try and answer. Now it's just patience to see how high this thermal will take me and if the numbers look good at the top. Approaching the cloud base and things are looking optimistic. Glide ratio required of 31 and an estimated arrival height over 150 meters. I squeeze everything I can out of the climb and then it's the now or never moment. It's time to start the final glide. Throughout the first part of the final glide, I experienced more sink and more of a headwind component than predicted at the top of my climb, so you can see the numbers are no longer looking so good. My average cruise glide ratio is 27:1 and I need a glide ratio of 40:1 to make it home. The predicted arrival height is negative, so it's starting to look like an outlanding might be on the cards. There are many good outlanding options in the area, and although I am only 300 meters above the ground here, I always have the option of going closer to the lake where the ground also gets lower. I do, however, need more height in order to get home, so I optimistically stop in some bumps I found over a quarry to gain some extra meters. The search over the quarry wasn't worth it, and it only cost me some much needed height. My only realistic chance to avoid an outlanding is to try the ridge ahead. The wind is northeasterly and moderate in strength, so I'm hoping there is enough of a northerly component to make the ridge work. Seeing a paraglider coming away from the ridge did get me wondering about how good the ridge might be though. Throughout this part of the final glide, I did remember some of my early military low-flying training. We had a technique where in the event of an engine failure at low level with the wind straight across the track, you can pick fields into wind to make a turn straight onto a final approach, or a field under the nose that can be reached by making a 270-degree turn onto the final approach. This was coming in handy as I was continuously updating my possible outlanding field without too much stress in planning the circuit. The first positive signs that the ridge might be a good option start showing as I approach some of the smaller hills. My average glide ratio starts to increase, although I have to admit at the time I was judging most of what was going on by looking out the window and hearing better sounds coming from the Vario. Still good options to outland towards the lake, and the ground drops off in that direction too, giving a bit more time to run the procedure. I only need to get around this ridge and I'll have the airfield in sight. When flying this close to the terrain, it is always good to have a higher airspeed and an escape plan in mind in case of unexpected gusts. In this case, I'm priming my muscles for a climbing turn to the left if anything starts to feel strange. The frequency of my scan is really starting to increase, as a combination of being close to the ground and turning the corner of the ridge means suitable fields ahead are coming later into view. I'm constantly checking airspeed and outlanding options quite rapidly now. This message is welcome news. It means my arrival altitude at the destination waypoint is now positive based on my safety McCready setting. However, a direct glide is not possible due to terrain on the direct course. The above final glide message is the next bit of good news. It means I can make it back even considering terrain. Though I'm not home and dry yet, as this means an arrival height of 0 and I need some height to set up for a circuit and some margin to cope with any sink. This last ridge that sticks out into the valley is my last chance to build height before making the jump over to the airfield. It is also likely to have some sink behind it, so I plan on making 1 or 2 passes for those few extra meters. The airfield is now just coming into view on the right-hand side, but it still feels so far away, and it is strange to see some of the local landmarks from this close. This is the worst timing, but I realize that I have a digit incorrectly selected for the correct frequency at interruption. It's these moments that kill people, so I'm very careful when correcting the mistake. I'll probably have to fly a non-standard approach, so it will be good to announce this on the radio so others know what I'm doing. Of course, I can only do that with the correct frequency selected.
Alistair, press 1. You should do a direct final on runway 24.
Thanks very much. I'm just going to make a right base for 24.
Another bit of bad timing. I since learned that I must have lost power just after transmitting as the audio vario turned off and the FLARM reset. I noticed something odd a little later when I received a FLARM indication that I'd never seen before. Thanks to those who commented in the other video and helped solve my mystery.
Okay, that will work out. Should be no problem.
It's going to be a late gear retract or extend, so I've got my hand on lever. I've not forgotten, if anyone's wondering.
Excellent.
A last glance at the flight computer and I have 60 meters to reach a direct final for runway 24. Jan, my guardian angel, is watching things unfold from above in the Duo Discus, passing great suggestions over the radio. It's a nice feeling to know you are not alone. Landing in this direction means I will have to accept the tailwind. If it was a short runway, I would have to think about coming in slower, but the runway here is long and with plenty of space either side, so it's not an issue. If you've liked this video, I really appreciate it if you subscribe, and I'm happy to hear your thoughts in the comments.
Alistair, excellent, well done. Und Philipp, vielen Dank.